We know very little about the sun.
On the 21st of June, the sun rises over there. We are going to one of the most impressive archaeological sites in America.
Here, we can see the remains of a great society, even more sophisticated than Rome. Each discovery leads to 10 new questions, at least.
So when one leaves one's hands with a lot of faith, one receives the sun's energy, which gives strength to the human being.
Knowing the stars, knowing the celestial bodies, the quest for knowledge satisfies a person's curiosity.
Human beings are influenced by what our star, the sun, does.
What we do, these moments make life worth living.
Our life on Earth is strongly linked with the sun. Is it possible that our mother star might one day fade and life on this planet becomes extinct? All plants depend on sunlight to produce their energy. The entire food chain of living beings that inhabit the planet rests upon this marvelous process of photosynthesis. What would the world be like without the sun? This very thought terrified pre-Columbian civilizations, so they raised magnificent temples and cities to honor the sun. But an overactive sun can also be dangerous. Should we worry about the danger of violent solar explosions that could hit our planet and destroy our technological life? We begin our journey to discovering the secrets of the sun in Mexico City. An extraordinary woman who has devoted her life to sharing science with the public will accompany us. She is Julieta Fierro, author of over 20 books, some of them written in the Mayan language. Besides her work as a researcher, Julieta attempts to rescue the rich astronomical knowledge of indigenous cultures in Mexico, where the sun played a central role.
We're visiting one of the most impressive archaeological sites in America. It is so large that when the Mexica people discovered it, they thought it had been built by the gods due to its magnitude. That's why it's called Teotihuacan, which means the site of the gods. This was a valley that had 80 water sources. It was a forestry area. And there was this very important influx of other cultures that would come and trade with the Teotihuacanos. We don't know what language they spoke or what kind of government they had, but we do know that they were people who loved life. Right now, we're entering the archaeological site of Teotihuacan. We are about 31 miles away from Mexico City, in the highlands. It's a volcanic region that's extremely fertile because volcanic ashes contain nitrogen and sulfur-fixing substances, with a great potential for agriculture.
A ver, aquí tiene mi credencial UNAMITA.
Mayores de 60 años jubilados o pensionados de...
Yo soy mayor de 60 años.
Estudiantes y maestros.
Maestra, o sea, cumplo con varios de sus requisitos. ¡Qué padre!
We're at one of the most important sites of Teotihuacan. As you see, all the structures are built in Mesoamerican style. Slope, board, and then stairs. At the top, it's very likely that there were temples where different rituals were held. This vast structure was not a dwelling place. It was rather a place for worship or trade. Well, let's enter what's commonly known as the Citadel, but it's actually the market square. The protocol for climbing the various pyramids was sideways, so that you never turned your back on the gods. Here, there was a temple where the ruling class lived. Imagine the splendor of being here, surrounded by products from all over Mesoamerica that were brought to supply this grandiose place. We're in the very middle of the Avenue of the Dead. A purely Mexican name, but it was a Teotihuacan avenue that ran through this area from south to north. We will approach the site of the Pyramid of the Moon, and to its side, the Pyramid of the Sun. Behind is one of the tallest pyramids in the world, and the second tallest in Mexico, the Pyramid of the Sun.
Within the complex architecture of the city of Teotihuacan, the Pyramid of the Sun was built in a strategic location. The pyramid was constructed on a side of the Avenue of the Dead, which runs through the entire monumental site from south to north. From the top of the pyramid, one could see the sunrise and the sunset all year round, providing a great sense of time and a very precise calendar. It was astronomical knowledge that gave the ruling class a great power over the common people.
It is a mandatory tour for Mexicans. Every time we come here, we feel exhilarated. We say that these are the moments that make life worth living.
Who were the ancient inhabitants of Teotihuacan? Who created these amazing buildings using only the strength of their hands, possibly during several generations?
Los teotihuacanos pertenecen a un periodo.
The Teotihuacans belong to a period long before the Aztecs populated this place here in central Mexico. The Teotihuacan culture, which built this great city, was responsible for spreading the knowledge of previous cultures that already existed in pre-Hispanic Mexico 1,000 years before them. After this site was deserted, it took almost 600 years for another great culture, the Mexicas, or Aztecs as some call it, to take control of central Mexico. Around 100 or 50 AD, there was great volcanic activity in the area. The eruption of Zitle volcano and the disaster forced the population to leave the zone. The fleeing groups were seeking refuge in an area where they could have enough food, but most interestingly, where they could find protection in an ancient sanctuary. This ancient sanctuary lies exactly underneath us. Beneath the Pyramid of the Sun, there is a cave known from the beginning of this site's history. This cave goes about 19 feet underground and runs for a distance of nearly 324 feet. At its end, this cave is divided into 4 small chambers, forming what some consider a flower of 4 petals. Above this cave, the Pyramid of the Sun was built at the entrance of the city.
¿Cómo estás excavando el tercer piso de estuco que cubría todo este cuarto? Lalo, mira, sí me gustaría que vieras, por ejemplo, atrás de ti, se puede observar el nivel de petate natural de roca madre, ¿sí? Se parte para elevar el nivel de piso para la primera ocupación, que es este precisamente.
Aguas con eso, sí. De la Cruz Roja queda lejos.
The ancient Teotihuacanos and also the Mayans were great observers of the sky, both of the day and night skies. Many of the buildings are associated with the trajectory of the sun. The discovery of a cave right at this place, behind the Pyramid of the Sun, serves as evidence of this. This cave is known as an archaeological astronomical cave. When it was explored, a small trail was found, whose shadow disappears exactly during the winter solstices. These caves served as a reference for the Teotihuacan's ruling elite when it came to knowing what time of the year it was, the shortest day, the longest day, depending on the solstice. All pre-Hispanic cultures studied the sun in one way or another. They watched the heavens and were amazed to see the movement of the stars, the sun, the planets. What I find most stunning is that without any of the instruments or the technical knowledge that we currently have, they were able to calculate the solar year, perhaps even more precisely than us. let us think that the Great Pyramids, such as the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon, are reference points and represent the sacred tree where the temple is closest to the skies, at the level of the heavens. The squares represent the earthly grounds, and the different caves, since there are many caves in Teotihuacan, represent the underworld. We can see the legacy of a great society that at the time was even more complex than the Roman civilization in Europe. Teotihuacan had no comparison to any other city. Teotihuacan is unique. Nothing like it was ever built before or after.
After discovering the importance of the sun in the imposing city of Teotihuacan, Julieta recommends that we explore another mysterious site. A place where everything seems to revolve around the sun and reveals its importance for the native cultures in America ages before the arrival of the Spaniards.
Tenemos el enorme placer de estar
We are delighted to be in Malinalco, an archaeological site that is highly relevant for astronomy and for other cultural issues.
The whole archaeological area of Malinalco is situated within the route that leads up to the Pacific Ocean. This is one of the most important temples, since this was the hub of power. It is thought that taxes were collected here, and most importantly, there was a time when this was used for military training.
We need to remember that this was during the Stone Age. There were no metals, no animals to carry things. But the carving is still extremely refined. It's amazing. Afterwards, it didn't always look like this, since it got plastered and painted. These are just spectacular places. Nowadays, it might seem a bit exaggerated, since we're used to seeing gray-looking ruins, but even the Greek marble statues were painted.
This is known as a monolithic temple because it is carved from only one piece of rock. First, the hill had to be evened out with rock instruments of a harder stone, like pickaxes, which are known as tesitas in Spanish. The monolithic temple is very peculiar since it was built with the intention of expressing the Mexica imperial power, in conjunction with a similar temple that they had in Mexico City. Globally, all the monolithic temples are tombs, or temples for meditation, and for religious purposes. But, in this case, this is the only temple where it is thought that military-type activities took place, such as the graduation of warriors. This represents a snake with open jaws, which highlights the tongue towards the floor. It is a forked tongue, with two small peaks.
Y después los colmillos que se
Then we see its fangs represented by these two bumps in both sides, as you can also see over there. It has an eye, which is this area, and the ear globe, which serpents have. This is an allegory for the warrior who is about to enter, who has earned the right to be in this place.
If we look towards the background, at the back, which is a semicircle, we can see an eagle, which represents the day and the sun. In the back, there's a jaguar with its hands and jaws and its face, representing the night.
They are the people of the sun. They think they are the people chosen to be the sun's representatives on earth. According to their culture, we are the keepers of the sun on its daily journey. So, the sun rises in the day because we provide it with food and drink. At night, the sun holds a great battle against the underworld, and so it is our task to provide it with food so that it rises again the next day. Since they believed that this really happened, they began to undertake wars in order to get blood from sacrifices to provide food for the sun.
This monument is dedicated to the day and the night. At midday, the sun would enter through the zenith. At the top of this roof, there was a hole, so that when the sun rose, it would cast light on one of the three snakes that are found inside the semicircular altar. As the sun advanced, at midday, it shone on the central figure, the eagle sculpture at the center, and in the afternoon, the sun illuminated the third eagle.
At the moment, the monolithic temple of Malinalco is the one under closest surveillance. It has fissures, naturally cracking from the hill, and naturally, rain falls over it. We are very concerned at the moment, and are doing our best efforts to preserve it, so future generations can inherit these ruins in their best shape possible.
We marvel at the advanced knowledge of these people. How much of this legacy is still alive today in the American continent? How do the new generations continue to study and understand the sun? To answer these questions, we travel to Bogota, Colombia. One of the most modern planetariums in Latin America operates here, carrying out valuable educational work amongst children.
Pensando por dónde es que sale el sol para podernos ubicar bien. ¿Por dónde sale el sol? Oriente. Excelente. Desde Colombia vemos el cielo del sur y el cielo del norte. Vemos todo el cielo. Los indígenas se reunían en torno a esto para poder hacer sus rituales y poder medir la hora. Ya casi se produce la sombra, mírenla. Esa sería la sombra.
In ancient times, it seemed that everything rotated around us, including the sun. It seemed that we were the center of the world. For example, the ancient cosmological models were geocentrical. Because that was what our senses indicated, that was our first experience. Of course, nowadays, we know that we are not the center of the solar system. Our planet rotates around the sun, and the sun is not even the center of anything, since it also rotates around the galaxy, which we call the Milky Way.
Miramos hacia el norte y si estiramos la mano hacia el oriente, lo siento, Samu, hacia el oriente, ese puntito del oriente, el sol sale por ahí solamente el 21 de marzo y el 21 de septiembre. Solamente esos días. ¿En tu cumpleaños? Eso se llama equinoccio. Y si sale por allá, el sol, miren lo que hace. Se hace así, ay, y se oculta por el occidente y ese pedacito se llama Trópico de Capricornio.
The sun is one of the most admired stars in all the mythologies around the world. The roles it plays is evident. As a giver of life, a giver of light and energy, it has always had the role as a male entity of energy, strength, and light, the creator.
Este tiende a venir hacia acá. Entonces esas son las 9. Y miren que para que se mueva una hora, el sol tiene que moverse en el cielo 15 grados.
Y cuando el sol llega al norte son las 12 del día.
Esa es una excelente pregunta. Háganse acá en círculo alrededor de nuestro gnomo. Y sabes que para calcular que este reloj de sol nos sirva perfectamente para todo el año, sí tiene que pasar a las 12 justamente por el norte. Y miren que si hacemos esa lineecita otra vez, el sol sale por el 21 de junio por allá y se mueve así como hacia el norte y se oculta por el occidente, ese caminito que hizo es el Trópico de Cáncer.
The sunrise on certain key dates of the year are still celebrated throughout the continent. Its origin goes back hundreds or thousands of years. One of the most exciting and breathtaking ceremonies takes place in Teotihuacan, Bolivia, on the winter solstice of the southern hemisphere.
We stand at the northern area of the Puerta del Sol. What we are seeing here is the main part of this temple, which there are 3 important temples that are mainly astronomically oriented. That is, from north to south, east to west. The Sun Gate served as a calendar for the people of Teotihuacan. Since here, there are 4 seasons, mainly 21st of June, which for us represents the Andean Amazon New Year. On this day, the sun rises in the morning and connects with the Sun Gate Temple. For tomorrow, we are expecting many visitors. Yet, people have started arriving to Guagui since 10 p.m. Teotihuacan is a main gathering place for people, since these temples are full of energy and people come to receive that energy since early in the morning. That is why we'll start to see people enter at 5 a.m. The New Year for the Aymara Andean Amazon people is celebrated in Teotihuacan. It represents the cultural center for mankind, where really all the indigenous authorities have celebrated the return of the sun, the Wilikakuti, for about 5,521 years. This tradition has been carried out throughout the years up until today.
O kanawa sui taskanaka macak tiempo sasa. Stanoa. Ukap Castellan Aronos Stanoa. Un paz, tranquilidad, libertad, armonía.
We believe that the sun's rays provide energy in this place, what we call Acapana, the Kalasasaya temple. So when one lifts one's hands with a lot of faith, one receives the sun's energy, which gives strength to the human being. So this is what we are celebrating at this time.
It is an
important date for the cultures in our country, particularly for indigenous cultures. For thousands of years, these groups have practiced agriculture and raised animals, so they need to know exactly the cycle of the seasons, on which date these seasons begin and end, the time for harvesting, for planting, in order to manage their agriculture. Many countries, even neighboring countries, have not managed to keep this cultural value. This cultural wealth and diversity that Bolivia has kept, as well as our ability for living together within this diversity. Most countries have committed a sort of cultural suicide because they've decided to cast aside their pre-colonial origins and their indigenous identity. Fire has fascinated mankind since ancient times, and the sun has always been associated with fire. For a long time, astronomers, out of ignorance about the source of the sun's energy, thought that the sun was a bonfire, like the one we have here. However, in the middle of the 19th century, when they started taking measurements, imagine if the sun were a bonfire.
The sun is enormous. It has over 330,000 times more matter than Earth. If the sun were entirely made of coal or sticks, it would burn for only 150 years. Nowadays, we know that the sun will live for another 5 billion years. The sun's fuel, which is composed of hydrogen, is not burnt throughout the sun. It only burns in the core. The sun's engine is in its core, in the nucleus, the heart of the sun. There, it burns at 15 million degrees and will burn oxygen into helium for another 5 billion years. One of the most peculiar aspects of the sun is that it's not a solid ball, nor a liquid ball. The sun is a cloud of gas, a huge globe of gas. In theory, one could go right through the sun. Of course, the sun's temperature is 6,000 degrees in the visible part, but its core, it burns at 15 million degrees.
The last stop on our trip through Iberoamerica takes us to the Canary Islands in Spain. Here, an international team of researchers tries to unravel the mysteries of the sun using state-of-the-art technology.
The Tate Observatory was the first site of what nowadays is known as the Astrophysics Institute of the Canary Islands. It is a unique place with exceptional conditions for astronomy. Pioneer groups from Europe realized that there were unique conditions here to install large telescopes within European soil, without going further than Europe. Convinced by the quality of the skies in the Canary Islands, Germans built the first solar telescopes, then the Swedish, and later the British, who have a very ancient and important tradition in astronomy. They started to install their telescopes on this island.
Our planet constantly suffers the onslaught of large solar flares and violent eruptions. What risk do we run? Is it likely that life could end due to these enormous explosions? To answer these questions, a new solar telescope called Gregor was built in Teta. It is one of the largest telescopes of its kind in the world.
Gregor is a state-of-the-art solar telescope with the most advanced instrumentation available for solar astrophysics. It combines a light structural design, a large, almost 5-foot telescope to study the sun. One must bear in mind that the sun shines very brightly, and sometimes we have too many photons coming from the sun. These photons, this light, produces a lot of heat in the system. Therefore, it is not a good idea to build very large solar telescopes. The mirror, shall we say the eye of this telescope, has a diameter of 1 meter and is the third largest in the world. And the technology behind it, that is, the eyes that will analyze this light, are also extremely advanced instruments. as we change the filter with which we observe the sun, we see other aspects of the sun. Specifically, we can see that there's a layer above the visible layer of the sun, which is very dim, and constant activity takes place there. The sun is constantly changing. In a question of seconds, of minutes, there are explosions, eruptions, huge quantities of gas and particles are ejected toward the interplanetary environment, reaching Earth. The sun is really alive.
Observations carried out in Theta led to the discovery that the sun is constantly expanding and contracting in the same way that a human heart beats. But unlike a person's heart beating at around 60 times per minute, the sun beats every 5 minutes. It seems that our mother star is full of life. No wonder the sun has aroused such respect and adoration from ancient times to this day.
Right now, I am aligning the silostat so it can be placed inside the room. Well, the sun is reflected on this primary flat mirror and then onto the secondary mirror. The sun without magnification in its real size. Then I place it in line with the telescope's tube inside the room. Basically, what we are doing here is to study the behavior of sunspots along a solar cycle, within the maximum range of a solar cycle, which is every 11 years. Sunspots are like volcanoes, so there are eruptions towards outer space. Not like on Earth, for example, where we see the volcanoes forming and expelling lava, but they generally keep their external shape. There is usually a peak and smoke comes out, like in a chimney. This is a sunspot. It deforms and breaks the photosphere. It's plasmatic fluid, and all this matter is thrown outside the sun. Sunspots are found and produced around the sun's tropics. In other words, if this is the equator, at certain latitudes of the sun, that's where the birth, development, and death of sunspots takes place.
Here we are in the observer room of the telescope, at the very bottom of the telescope. And as I said, here we can see the big sunspot I am observing right here at the moment. And you can see it, it looks like an eye. Yeah? Here we have the dark part of the sunspot where we have big magnetic fields. And here we have the surroundings where this hot gas plasma, it's 6,000 Kelvin or degrees hot, is pushed away from the magnetic field.
Those flames of matter eventually break apart in the sun, since they are huge and release wind and acceleration of particles. We are watching an explosion. The light takes a few minutes to reach the Earth, but these particles are traveling at a very high speed, but even so, they take between 1 to 4 days to reach Earth. Earth could not be inhabited if we did not have an atmosphere, because these waves, these solar winds with particles and radiation would not allow life on Earth. In other planets, life is not possible, but Earth has an atmosphere that protects us. There is a magnetic field over the Earth. There is a geographic North Pole and a South Pole. Earth is like a magnet, Therefore, the magnetic shielding of Earth and the atmosphere's shield protects us from impacts. But as I say, these phenomena liberate such an enormous amount of energy that it is difficult for humans to grasp. These arches that we see in the sun are composed by matter that amounts to a magnitude of 10 Earths. Let us remember that the sun's diameter could hold 100 globes the size of the Earth. Or, for instance, if we could open up the sun at the top and throw balls inside, equivalent to the size of the Earth, it would take 1 million balls to fill the sun. The sun is a star that has piqued the curiosity, wonder, and even fear from all civilizations, from ancient times to this day. They tried to understand why the sun is there, what it did, how did it influence life, and whether it would rise the next day. All of these questions have sparked people's curiosity, which is perhaps the most important weapon that humans have. We have to learn to live with the sun. When we are children, we learn to live with our families. Sometimes in surroundings that we don't like, but we have to learn to live with the family. I think the same applies to the sun.
We know very little about the sun. The behavior of the sun is still a mystery.
To enjoy every sunrise, every sunset, and to watch this star, this fascinating object, and to study it, it really makes you think and question. Yes, I feel a special admiration for my star, the sun, from the knowledge I have gained and what I feel for it. I think it is very important.
Knowing the stars, knowing the celestial bodies, the quest for knowledge satisfies a person's curiosity to make sense of why we are here on Earth.
The sun is at the center of our small universe, which affects us all. No other phenomenon in the cosmos really affects the Earth. The large supernova, galaxies that crash against each other, all of that really does not affect humans. What really affects people is what goes on in our star, the sun. In that sense, the sun is still highly relevant when it comes to mankind.